Othello, Part 2. Well Met at Cyprus. On the way to Cyprus a terrible tempest sprang up, which scattered Othello's convoy and drove his own ship out of its course, so that, after all, Desdemona got to the island before her husband. Cassio, Othello's lieutenant, had already arrived, and had been sounding the praises of his general's wife to the islanders, and when news came that Desdemona's ship had also safely reached port, he was ready with a rapturous greeting for the young bride. "Oh, behold, the riches of the ship is come on shore," he cried, as Desdemona approached, with Emilia, Iago, Roderigo, and their attendants. "Hail to thee, lady! The grace of heaven before, behind thee, and on every hand, and wheel thee round." "I thank thee, valiant Cassio," replied Desdemona. "What tidings can you tell me of my lord?" Cassio answered that Othello was not yet arrived, and for anything he knew he was well, and would be there shortly, and even as he spoke the guns on the citadel thundered a greeting to a friendly sail. Like a spider who has woven its web, Iago watched his victims. He gloated over the idle chatter between Cassio and Desdemona, and marked, as they laughed and talked together, how the young man smiled and bowed, and often kissed his fingers with an air of gallantry. "Ay, smile upon her, do," he sneered to himself. "If such tricks as these strip you out of your lieutenancy, it had been better you had not kissed your 3 fingers so oft. Very good, well kissed, an excellent courtesy, 'tis so indeed." So he went on, taking malicious pleasure in the young man's little affected airs, which would the more readily lend colour to any suggestions Iago chose to bring against him. Othello, meanwhile, had landed. His joy at again meeting his wife was so intense that he could scarcely express it. "If it were possible now to die, 'twere now to be most happy," he exclaimed, for he feared that unknown fate would never again hold in store for him another moment of such absolute content. "Come, let us to the castle. News, friends!" he went on, turning to the others. "Our wars are done, the Turks are drowned. How does my old acquaintance of this isle? Come, Desdemona, once more, well met at Cyprus." In honour of the good tidings of the destruction of the Turkish fleet, and of the marriage of their new governor, Othello, a public rejoicing was proclaimed in Cyprus, and during the space of 6 hours the whole island was to be given up to feasting and revelry. Cassio was appointed to watch that evening as captain of the guard, and Iago saw here an excellent opportunity to take the first step in his scheme of revenge, by bringing some disgrace on the young lieutenant. He knew that a very little wine, such as would have no effect on another man, made Cassio excited and quarrelsome. He determined to lure him on to drink more than was good for him, after which Roderigo was to find some occasion to irritate Cassio, either by speaking too loud, or sneering at his discipline, or by any other means he pleased. Cassio, being rash and very sudden in anger, would probably strike Roderigo, which, if possible, he was to be provoked into doing, for out of this Iago would incite the islanders to mutiny, and get Cassio dismissed from his post. When, therefore, Cassio entered the hall of the castle to take up his duties for the night, Iago met him with a great appearance of friendliness, and cordially pressed him to join in the entertainment he had provided for some guests, Montano, the former governor of Cyprus, and some other gentlemen, who would fain drink a measure to the health of Othello. Knowing his own weakness, Cassio at first refused. "Not tonight, good Iago," he said. "I have very poor and unhappy brains for drinking. I could well wish courtesy would invent some other custom of entertainment." "Oh, they are our friends, but 1 cup," pleaded Iago. "I will drink it for you." Cassio answered that he had drunk only 1 cup that night, and even of that the wine was diluted, and yet he already felt the effects. He was unfortunate in this peculiarity, and dared not task his weakness with any more. "What, man, 'tis a night of revels, the gallants desire it," urged the tempter. "Where are they?" asked Cassio, his resolution beginning to falter. "Here, at the door. I pray you, call them in." "I'll do it, but it mislikes me," said Cassio, and he reluctantly went in search of Iago's guests. When he presently returned with 3 or 4 noisy gallants who had themselves been feasting too lavishly, they had already persuaded him to drink another cup with them. Iago now did his best to lure them on by calling for more wine, and trolling out a jovial song. "And let me the cannikin clink, clink, and let me the cannikin clink. A soldier's a man, a life's but a span, why then let a soldier drink, drink." "An excellent song," pronounced Cassio, whereupon Iago sang another, which he found even more exquisite than the first. So merrily went the minutes that it was not until much later that the new lieutenant remembered his neglected duties, by which time his senses were quite confused by what he had drunk. When he left, Iago took occasion to spread a bad impression of him by saying what a pity it was that such a good soldier should be spoilt by the persistent habit of drink. In fact, that he never went sober to bed. This, of course, was an absolute falsehood, but the gentlemen of Cyprus believed what Iago said. Montano remarked it was a pity Othello were not told of it. Perhaps he did not know, or perhaps his good nature prized the virtue in Cassio, and overlooked the evil. It was a great pity that the noble Moor should hazard such an important place as second in command to one with such an incurable fault. It would be right to say so to Othello. "Not I, for this fair island," said the hypocritical Iago. "I love Cassio well, and would do much to cure him of this evil. But hark, what noise!" For there was a cry without, "Help! Help!" The next instant Cassio entered violently, driving Roderigo in front of him and beating him. Montano interfered to protect Roderigo, whereupon Cassio turned on him, and both drawing their weapons, Montano was presently wounded. Iago meanwhile had sent Roderigo to run and cry a mutiny, and make as much disturbance as possible, while Iago himself had the alarum bell set pealing, and shouted noisily in all directions, contriving largely to increase the confusion under pretence of restoring order. Othello was speedily on the scene, and with prompt decision at once silenced the uproar. Then he asked for an explanation, which no one seemed willing to give. "Honest Iago, that lookest dead with grieving, speak, who began this? On thy love I charge thee." Iago mumbled some confused excuses, which were certainly not intended to deceive the general. Cassio, on being appealed to, now completely sobered by the shock, answered simply, "I pray you pardon me, I cannot speak." Montano declared that he was much too injured to say anything. Othello's officer, Iago, could tell him everything. He was not conscious of having done or said anything amiss. Othello now began to lose patience, and knowing the serious danger of such a disturbance in the present unsettled condition of the island, he curtly commanded Iago to let him know how the brawl began, and who set it on. With feigned reluctance, but with much secret satisfaction, Iago gave an account of what had happened, taking care to heighten his own ignorance of the affair, and ostentatiously pretending to try to shield Cassio from blame. Othello's sentence was short and sharp. "I know, Iago, thy honesty and love do mince this matter, making it light to Cassio. Cassio, I love thee, but never more be officer of mine." When Othello and the others had retired, Iago, seeing Cassio standing as if dazed, went up and asked him if he were hurt. "Ay, past all surgery," was the mournful response. "Marry, heaven forbid!" said Iago, startled. "Reputation, reputation, reputation," groaned Cassio. "Oh, I have lost my reputation. I have lost the immortal part of myself. My reputation, Iago, my reputation!" "As I am an honest man, I thought you had received some bodily wound," scoffed Iago. "There is more sense in that than in reputation." And he tried to cheer up Cassio by telling him there were ways in which he could recover the general's favour. Only sue to him, and he would soon be won round. "I would rather sue to be despised than deceive so good a commander with so slight, so drunken, so indiscreet an officer," returned the contrite Cassio. "You or any man may be drunk once in his life, man," urged Iago. "I'll tell you what you shall do." And he went on to say that the general's wife was now the general, meaning by this that Othello would do anything that Desdemona wanted. Iago advised Cassio to appeal to Desdemona. She was so good and kind that she always did more than she was asked. If Desdemona pleaded with Othello on his behalf, Iago was ready to wager anything that Cassio would soon be in higher favour than ever. Cassio was grateful to Iago for his counsel, which the latter protested he only offered in love and honest kindness, and Cassio resolved early the next morning to beseech Desdemona to undertake his cause. Iago was delighted to find his plot working so smoothly. He knew that the more earnestly Desdemona appealed on behalf of Cassio, the more fuel there would be to feed Othello's jealousy. Thus, out of the gentle lady's own sweetness and goodness, Iago made the net that was to enmesh them all.